Todd Crandell, founder of Racing for Recovery, here with one Joe Brinkman. How are you today, buddy?
Doing fantastic, brother.
I'm excited about doing this.
Yeah, me too, man.
I am going to break you today. No, I'm looking forward to this on many levels. So I was thinking about what I was going to ask you first. What do you think I'm going to ask you first?
Oh, boy. I honestly don't know.
Okay.
I've been watching a lot of these, and it's awesome to watch people that I've gotten to know both personally and through this program kind of just talk about themselves like that. You know, you get a sense of people through meetings or just like, you know, in passing here, but to see them one-on-one just talk to you and talk about the ways that this program has positively impacted them is just amazing. So
here's the question. I'm going to give you a hint. You jokingly, but I think there's a lot of sincerity into this, have said something to me early on that you're eventually going to do, which to me is a sign of self-esteem. And I think it started, I don't think it started at the church. I think it started in the IOP room where you used to say, Todd, someday you're going to do what?
I'm going to take your seat.
That's right. I started thinking about, again, what to talk to you about. And I don't know why you said that back then, but to me, and I know I pointed it out to you, to me it was a sign of there's some value in that kid that he sees I'm going to be doing something someday. So do you even recall like why you said that to me the first time?
So that goes back to a lot of the reasons that I chose to self-destruct. There's a lot of trauma I've dealt with in my past, but primarily that led to the fact that for a long time, I didn't value myself. I always sold myself short. You know, we talked about self-esteem when we do our book studies because there's a chapter about it, and a lot of it focuses on where, and I'm speaking for myself, but I came to this program because I didn't feel like the reason I self-destructed is I didn't like myself. I didn't like the stuff I was doing. I always took the easy route. You know, I went to college, I went to school, but I never really put a lot of effort into it because I didn't know what I wanted to do in life. You know, it took a long time, but just being in this IOP in part of this program and witnessing the positive things that we provide for people, you know, I want to be a part of that in some capacity. You know, I jokingly said I'm going to take your seat, but there's some truth behind that. You know, I want to provide the same type of service that you do to people. You know, I try every time I'm here, you know, to talk to people, to get to know them a little bit better and just do more to let them know that they are valued, you know, because I know how that feels because I didn't feel valued. So being able to provide that to someone who comes through these doors who might feel the same way I did and tell them, hey, there's hope, man. There's hope on the other side of this because I know where you were when I came in or when you came in and I know where I am now. So I know how that feels.
Okay, let's stick with this for a second. So you sit next to me on those Thursday night meetings, and I love having you sit there. What is it like to be in that seat and being an integral part of what we're doing on Thursday nights?
It's great because it makes you feel like you belong to something that's bigger than yourself, you know. It kind of, I don't know, it's kind of hard to put into words, you know. Just being able to sit up there and be able to provide that type of service to people is great. You know, just to feel like you're a part of something and to help really kind of move everything along and help, you know, a meeting like that. Because I know there's a couple Thursday night meetings that really kind of spark stuff in me and people that I know. So being able to just be a part of that and help it run smoothly, and it's just an amazing feeling, to be honest with you.
So let's back up when you first used to come into my old counseling office. I mean, you're old school.
Very
right?
old school.
In that tiny little, well, some of the furniture that's in the back over there, so there. But let's talk about when you came in, what your mindset was there, and then eventually I'm going to get to where you are now. But what was your mindset like when you first came into my office?
When I first came in your office, I was there because I think on some level I knew that I had a problem that was just more than, you know, oh, I drink too much. You know, I knew there was more going on that I needed to talk to someone about. And I never wanted to go to counseling previously, because going to counseling or going to something of that nature back when my mindset was that there was something wrong with me. I was a problem. I wasn't good enough. I was broken, et cetera, whatever you want to put to that. So going to talk to you, I mean, it was primarily a result of my own choices. You know, my parents were tired of the destruction I was causing. They were tired of, you know, just all of the pain and hurt I was putting them through. So they said, you have to go talk to someone. I didn't want to go. My mindset was, whatever, I'll go talk to this guy for however long I need to until he signs off and says, yeah, I guess he's okay. And then I'll just go back to my old ways, because I was just doing it to just fill a quota almost. So the mindset, honestly, was just, whatever, I guess I'll go talk to this guy and I'll just move on past it. And once I sat down and talked to you, I realized that it wasn't, you knew, you know, you've been there, you know what it feels like. So it was just kind of easy to talk to you. Most other times I've talked to counselors or mental health professionals, I knew the right things to say just to get them out of the office. You know, I knew how to respond to their questions, so that way they would say, he sounds fine, you know, maybe he just went through something, he's good to go. But I never dealt with anything. You know, I never really dug down and figured out the reasons that I was doing the things I was doing. But talking to you, it was like, okay, this is someone who's been where I'm at. He's been through this, you know, he knows what it feels like, you know, underneath everything. He can see right through all the facade I'm throwing up, the mask I've put on. He knows how I'm feeling, and he knows that I'm just talking a big game to him. So just being able to talk to you alone and understanding a little bit of your story and what you do through this program was really helpful to me to say, okay, here's someone I could probably talk to about stuff that I didn't want to talk to about anyone else, because I was afraid they were going to label me as broken or as, you know, having a problem or something of that nature. You didn't make it seem like you have a problem. You made it seem like you're a hurting individual. Let's talk about that. Let's get to the bottom of that and figure out why you feel that way, you know?
Wow, this stuff actually works.
It's amazing.
It's amazing. So how did, and I'm going to use a clinical term here, the therapeutic alliance that we built, were you even cognizant of when that was starting to take shape?
Not really. I know a lot of people have asked me that question, you know, especially when people come in here for their first or whatever time, and they're like, well, how does this work? You know, when did you know? And I said, I honestly can't tell you that there was a day where a switch flipped, where I said, you know, I'm tired of living like this. But I can tell you it was a gradual process where just sitting in there, because when I first came here, I didn't talk a whole lot. You know, I would sit in the back of the room in meetings or the back of the room in IOPs, and I wouldn't really talk. I would just listen a lot. I might offer a comment or two, but I was just, you know what, I'm not like these people, was my mindset coming in, which is hilarious now that I think about it. But it was just witnessing other people grow and other people kind of talk about their experiences and how this place has helped them, made me feel like, okay, I can start to open up a little bit, you know? And then one day I realized, and I've talked about this before in meetings, where there was just one day where I woke up and I didn't hate myself that day. You know, I didn't hate the things that I had done. I said, you know what? Today's actually pretty good. I'm actually doing pretty good. So it was just kind of a gradual mindset, which I think was a result of just making more positive choices, you know, not just physically, but also emotionally and mentally. Being able to work through problems rather than just responding in a negative manner through anger or hurt or anything like that.
You know, you're in our upcoming book, Choices and Consequences, which I'm proud of you for your accomplishments, and I'm honored you're in it. And I read your story that's in there, and I got to be honest with you, the part about your friend that died, I didn't know that. You have never, to the best of my recollection, we never talked about that. I think you might have said there was one of your friends that died, but I didn't know the intricacies of that. And now that the world's going to read that story, I'm going to ask you about it on here because I think it's fair game and worthwhile. What was that like going through that for you?
Difficult, I'll say. It's one of those things that, looking back now, It was just something that kind of happened in passing. Sorry.
No, I'm not trying to hurt you, Joe. This is good.
Sorry.
You're okay. Let me ask you this. Is it easier if you talk about how you've overcome that and started to heal from that? Is that easier to start with?
Yeah. Coming here and just talking about it and having people tell me that they've gone through something similar, it just helped to make me feel like it wasn't my fault. And that was a big thing for me. For so many years, I blamed myself for it.
Oh.
Just because of a stupid comment I made. And I know it was a random act of fate and it wasn't anyone's fault. But it was helpful just to talk about it and know that I wasn't alone.
Right? How do you, what was his name?
Tim.
If you could I assume Tim's going to be watching this podcast, right? All right. There's some humor, lighten things up. What do you want Tim to know?
That I love him.
Right.
He was one of my best friends back in the day, and we had a stupid falling out that you would have in any high school friendship, you know? And then all of a sudden when he's gone, you know, a lot of us had to deal with the fallout of that, and I didn't process it correctly at the time. And I just kind of internalized it because everyone else was, you know, they dealt with it in their own way. And slowly as, like, you know, I got into, like, college and everything, and I just remember that when I would be under the influence and get really drunk, I would talk about it to people, and everyone would just tell me the same thing, like, you know, dude, that was X amount of years ago, like, we've all moved on, you know. So that's why I think led to a lot of it, because I said, you know, well, people are telling me to move on, like, I should just move on, you know. That shouldn't be a problem. But just being able to get here and talk about it and just get it off, I think, was one of the big ones for me, because you talk to people who have lost people before and how they dealt with it and everything like that, and it was just a relief almost to talk about it. And I don't remember if it was an IOP session or if it was just somewhere in passing where, you know, because the people in IOP, you grew really close to them. You know, you see those guys for 2-3 hours a day throughout the week, and you're just able to kind of talk to them about stuff. So, and I remember when I talked about it to someone finally, and they just, hey man, I've been there. You know, that was pretty much all it took for me to start saying, you know what, it wasn't my fault. I can move on from that.
How much, by the way, I'm proud as heck of you for doing what you're doing. How much of that whole thing with Tim attributed to your continuous decision to drink?
I think a lot of it. To be honest, a big part is I always felt like the wrong person died that day, which I know is a really now kind of twisted thing to think, but I always just tried to, I guess, emulate what he was back then, you know, and just a lot of that went into it. And I just always now I just try to live up to the person that he was back then. You know, he was selfless, he was nice, he was funny, he was everything. So, but then after coming here and able to really deal with that and kind of allow my true self to come out rather than just like that mask that you put on when I got drunk back in the day, it's a lot. It's awesome just to not have to carry that weight anymore and to not feel like I'm living for someone else, but I'm living for myself now.
You mentioned caring, funny, a couple of the things that describe Tim. Would you say those same characteristics are applicable to you?
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. a lot of the things that I am privileged to do, there's a couple words that really I think are not intentionally mean by the person that's saying them, but move on. You need to get over it. Those are the most insensitive things that can be said to someone else who's going through something. Mm-hmm. If you can ask a question, how did that impact you? I'm sorry you're hurting. You're opening the door for someone like yourself to just feel comfortable enough to speak about it. But telling somebody they need to do something when we're not in that person's shoes, I know it's coming from care, but I think it is one of the most disrespectful and actually damaging things we can actually do, Okay, so let's move on to IOP. You're in IOP. We're fortunate enough to get the building out here. You're coming in and getting your life together. What was being in IOP like that was different from being in my old office?
Being able to just talk to people and relate to them about their own experiences and really get to know people. I've been through a lot of treatment centers before, and the funny part is the only people that I keep in contact with in those other treatment centers are now here at this treatment center. So a lot of what we do at Racing for Recovery is we put the emphasis on peers. We have your counselors, like you, AJ, and the staff here, but you put a lot of emphasis on your peers and leaning on them in hard times, supporting them through their hard times, and then just being able to kind of develop those lifelong friendships. And I think that was a big part of it. When I started finally to open up to my peers here and really get to know them and develop those friendships, the whole game changes, There's people who I went through IOP here who we still stay in contact. We still hang out. We still do events through Racing for Recovery or outside of it. And that, I think, was the most important part. It's just developing a circle of peers or friends that you can rely on that have been through the same stuff that you have, and that you're all growing from it and becoming better people. A lot of other treatment centers, I don't know if I had the opportunity or maybe I just didn't take advantage of that, but I knew that here, through this one, I had to do something different if I wanted to see different results. So that was my first step, was saying, okay, the friend group that I used to hang out with before I came here, they are going to continue to do what they do. They may not have the same issues that I do, so they're not going to deal with them the same way. But I knew when I came here, I was like, you know what, I'm going to open up to people. I'm going to start being social and developing those friendships with a good, sober group of peers. And that, I think, was one of the biggest, if not the biggest, things that I took from here, is developing a social group of people who are sober. So that way when we go out and do things, I know that I'm never going to feel pressured by those people, or I'm never going to feel that kind of, oh, we're out, let's go have a drink, Some other friend groups I hang out with even now, people will do that not knowing my situation. Now it's easy for just say, you know what, I don't drink, that's okay, thanks. But having that group of people, at least in the initial stages, knowing that I can still go out and be social rather than just locking myself in my apartment on the weekends, was a huge thing for me.
It was, again, it's been a privilege to have you, I call it pre and post, pre-Racing for Recovery facility and post, because one of the things I battled with, even when I was working with you back then, is I knew where I wanted this program to go, but we weren't there yet. And a part of it is exactly what you're talking about, that peer support. It's like I would meet with you once a week or once every 2 weeks, and it's like it's 1 hour. Mm-hmm. What can really get done in an hour other than presenting some information to you? But you can't really experience it. And I know our whole program has shifted to a whole other hype level, if you will, because I'm not done with that too. Buddy. But getting that to where it can be utilized 24/7 really was a game changer for us. And you talking like that exemplifies that. So carrying on that peer support thing, what was going to Boulder like for you?
Oh my gosh. Boulder was probably one of the greatest experiences of my life. And not only was that watching you perform the Ironman, which was also inspiring at the least, just being able to go there with the people that I had formed these relationships for almost a year, we drove all 24 hours out there. So being able to just go on a road trip with friends for a good purpose like that. I mean, that's something that I used to do back in the day with people, but this was just different, you know? It was, we kind of joke, me, Jake, and Jordan, that it was like having a 24-hour long meeting. You know, we're in a car the whole time, and we would just be goofing off and just really having some really good discussions, honestly. I remember a couple of them when we were just driving down the highway, you know, just being able to chat with people. And it didn't feel like, you know, you were being forced to open up or to talk to someone. It was just really natural. So, and then by the time we got there and just being in the house with everybody, you know, it was just an awesome experience, you know, just experiencing the whole thing.
Where did the hype level thing come from? Because, and I'm saying this, and I know there's a lot of humor in that, but for me, being around you doing that, I can't tell you how powerful that was for me on the day to keep my mindset where it needed to be, because I wasn't in the best condition doing that race. But every time I would see you and you doing that, it was a reminder of, yeah, keep your attitude at a certain level, because that's going to carry you. And that is so applicable to sobriety. So where did the whole hype level thing come from?
If you remember when we were going to go whitewater rafting that first or second day or so, and everyone was just kind of, you know, bumming around the house before we left and just kind of like, oh, all right. And I was like, listen, I don't know if you guys have ever been whitewater rafting, but this is an experience, you know, this is going to be awesome. And I was like, you know, we got to get this hype level up. And then everyone just kind of stuck with it. So I said, well, okay, I have a thing now, so I guess I'll just continue to do that. So I was out there just to have a great time. And I know it was early in the morning, but I just wanted to make sure that every day that we spent out there with that group of people, that we were going to have the best time of our lives. And from my experience, I think we did a pretty good job of that.
Would you say that those Ironman trips that Racing for Recovery takes people on are a good thing?
Yeah, I do. I think it shows people that not only can you do anything you put your mind to in sobriety, but it's also, like I said, you're getting to know your peers on a different level. You know, I know a lot of the people, when our group went out, you know, we'd all been through IOP together, but we had not been in that kind of close proximity, you know, basically living together for a week that we had before. But we came out of that even closer than I think we were when we went into it. So I think it's important, like I said, to kind of develop that peer group of friends. You know, you might see people here at meetings or something like that every now and then, but going on a trip like that, you know, it helps develop those social bonds and really build those relationships with people kind of going forward.
So what does the future for you look like? What does Joe envision for his life, and does Racing for Recovery have a place for you to fulfill a lot of those goals in?
The future, to me, well, let me back up. So I'm in my third year of sobriety right now. And my first year, I was mainly focused on just making sure that I got my house in order, so to say. You know, making sure that mentally I was okay to go back out into what we call the real world and really deal with everything that was happening. And I think I did a very good job of that. The second year, I was focused on basically physical challenges. Last year, I ran my first half marathon, which, just so it's clear to everyone, I did pass you during that. I finished before you did. Yeah, so right? I just want to make sure that's out there.
Say that again.
But it was all about physical challenges. I did a lot of races. I did a lot of things to just really kind of push my limits, so to say. I mean, I'd only ever ran, I think, a 5K before that. And I was suddenly training to run a half marathon. So year 3, my main focus now is mental challenges, kind of pushing the boundaries mentally, so to say. I remember talking to my mom, and we always talk about just things that come up, and I used to limit myself a lot to what I could do as far as that goes. Well, I only have so much education. I only have this. I only have that. And I do have to credit my parents with saying, like, you're so much more than that. You can push the boundaries of that. So now what I'm doing is just trying to, I guess, mental and really focus on things that I can do outside of just my normal job or my normal time here at racing. So kind of filling my free time more with things that I think are going to benefit me in the future and allow me to expand my knowledge and my experience rather than just, watching Netflix or whatnot. So racing for recovery is an integral part of my life at all facets of it. Whether I lift here, I spend time at meetings here. This is where I make a lot of my friends and kind of develop those friendships. So a life without racing for recovery in some capacity, I can't imagine that. This place has given me so much and has allowed me to think so much and learn so much that I can't imagine not spending time here. That was a big part of when I left IOP here and kind of went back to work. I knew I had to stay plugged into this place in some capacity or I was not going to do well out there. So even now, 2 years on, I still go to 3 meetings a week. I coach the softball team. I spend time with those guys on the weekend. And I just try to stay plugged in here as much as I can because I know that, and I've witnessed, some of my peers when people spend all their time here getting sober and kind of getting started, and then they think that they can just go back to how things were before without keeping this place, or at least what the lessons that they've learned a part of their lives, they tend to find themselves right back at square one, and I've been there before too. When I started out here initially, I said, I'm just going to go right back to the way life was, working full time, whatever. And I unfortunately made a poor decision. I had to come right back. But that was, to me, that was an enlightening moment. I said, I have to keep this place in some part of my life. And I come to 3 meetings a week because I enjoy it, because I enjoy meeting people, because I enjoy listening to people tell their stories. I used to say, every time I come to a meeting, I learn something new, and 3 years on, that is still the case. There's always something somebody says, whether they've been in sobriety a year or a day, that just clicks in my brain. And it's something that I don't think I could ever not be a part of.
Profound words. I think of a lot of people that come in and, traditionally you're told, okay, do 18 sessions of IOP or 3 counseling sessions and 12 support group meetings and you're good. And again, it's one of those things that's like, you're not even scratching the surface. Mm-hmm. This is not a destination, but racing for recovery is a never-ending journey of self-betterment.
Absolutely.
And your words exemplify that. I did remember when you passed Andy, and Andy waited for me, but when you passed me, I'm like, good for Joe, and I'm thinking, I'm never going to hear the end of this.
Never.
That's great. So here's the second to last question I have for you. Tell me what your family means to you.
My family's a very important part of my life. The Brinkmans, we're a family that always stays in touch no matter how far away we are. And having my parents be able to come to meetings here is, I think, one of the biggest pieces that helped made me as successful as I am. I know that before I was ready to get help through racing and really deal with everything, they were still in contact with you guys before I was ready to come get help. And I think that alone was a huge part of it, because you telling my mother, don't do that, or don't do this, or don't let Joe say this, was huge, because all throughout my addiction, my parents were my safety net. I knew that there was a certain level of things that I could do and still be able to call my mom, Oh, sorry, I got drunk again and I'm in the hospital. Oh, I crashed the car, whatever it was. But having you guys tell her, don't let him do that, was huge, because taking away that safety net during my addiction, that made it very, very difficult for me to continue doing that. So having my mom say, I'm only going to help you, or only call me if you want help, was huge for me, because at that point I knew I had no safety net. And I could keep doing the things I was doing, but it wasn't going to end well for me. I knew at that point it wasn't going to end well. And I remember when she said that, that was me saying, okay, it's really time to make a change. There's no more, my mom will bail me out again. So having them do that, and then to turn around and me say, okay, I'm ready for help, I'm coming in to get help, and having my mom say, I'm only going to support you if you're making the right decision, was huge for me. And she has. If I'm making the right decision, my mom and my parents are always going to support me. I remember when I first came here, I wasn't working, and at some point, finances became a little bit of a problem for me. And so I talked to my parents about it, and they helped, but I had to work for that, and they were not going to help me. And obviously I didn't do this, I did the right thing, but I knew that if I was going to get that type of help from them, but I wasn't going to make the right decisions, that was going to be gone. And that was a huge motivator for me to say, okay, my family's in my corner 100% as long as I'm making the right decisions, and that was huge for me, just having them be able to not only come in here to talk to you guys, but also to hold me accountable to my own, to myself, honestly, and be able to make those right decisions was a huge impact for me.
I think it's one of our 10 lifestyles that we read at every support group meeting is helping the family members learn how to effectively support and not detrimentally enabling the addiction. It's another thing I'm proud of is, we were the first program that included the families because I knew that it affected more than just us, Okay, last question. What would you say to a version of yourself, former self, that's watching this right now? What do you say to that person who's battling this stuff?
You're not alone. I know that that's how I felt before I wanted to get help. No one's as bad as I am. No one feels the same way you do. They do. They understand, and the people here are going to love you until you can love yourself.
Beautiful. Joe, thanks for doing this.
Anytime, brother.
Until next time, everybody, check out more of our podcasts and get a copy of our new book, Choices and Consequences. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.